Colorado and Wyoming are quite similar states. They border each other, they pretty much have the same generic rectangular shape, and they're pretty similar in size too, with Colorado being slightly larger. Both states are also mountains with the same rocky mountain chain running through each of them, so they have very similar geographies. Both of them are landlocked deep within the North American interior, and so both states have very similar climates that are generally dry and windy with cold and snowy winters. Both states have pretty similar levels of water resources capable of supporting agriculture and civilization. With so many similarities, it's crazy that Wyoming only has a population of 580,000 compared to Colorado's 5.8 million. So why is Wyoming so empty compared to Colorado? Let's find out in today's video. Here's a fact that will blow your mind. Wyoming's average population density of just 2.3 people per square kilometer ranks as one of the most empty locations anywhere on the planet. For comparison, Wyoming is on average even emptier than Australia or Namibia, two infamously empty countries that are mostly covered in uninhabitable deserts. The only location in Europe that comes anywhere close to matching Wyoming's emptiness is the far northern reaches of the Scandinavian peninsula in the region of Lapland in Finland, where the population density is around 1.8 people per square kilometer, but that's Lapland within the Arctic Circle, where the winters are brutally harsh and last for 7 months of the year. Compare that to Wyoming, where the climate is substantially more mild and tolerable. It gets even more interesting though. You see, Wyoming is the 10th largest state in the country by area, and it's also by far the absolute smallest in terms of population. Every other state in the country has a significantly higher population than Wyoming, including the really small ones like Vermont, Rhode Island, and Delaware. Wyoming has so few people in it that it doesn't really have cities of its own. The only urban areas in Wyoming are more like towns than cities. There are only 4 in the entire state that have a population of above 30,000 people. Most other extremely sparsely populated places in the world still have at least one proper major city. Alaska has Anchorage, Namibia has Windhoek, and Mongolia has Ulaanbaatar. The largest town in Wyoming is Cheyenne with a population of 63,000, about the same as the 143rd largest city in California, Santa Cruz. Now, a big reason why Colorado is so massively populated compared to Wyoming has to do with history. You see, Colorado was the first state of the two to actually begin attracting American settlers in the first place. Gold was discovered in the mountains of what would become Colorado back in 1858, along with the Southern Platte River that triggered a gold rush that has brought in thousands and thousands of white settlers storming into the territory pretty much all at once. The mountains up in Wyoming simply never offered the same quantities of gold and silver that people came in rushing into Colorado for. So Wyoming didn't have the same kind of early boost to settlers that Colorado got. Future discoveries of resources like copper, lead, and coal brought in even more miners to Colorado, which eventually led it to become a state in 1876, a full 14 years before Wyoming would become a state as well in 1890. By the turn of the 20th century, the mining boom and subsequent agriculture boom had skyrocketed Colorado's population up to 539,000, which is comparable to what Wyoming's population looked like today more than a century later. Back in 1900, Wyoming's population was only 92,000, which is strangely closer to Colorado's population back then than it is today. What ended up happening over the next 120 years to the present is that Colorado's population growth kept outpacing Wyoming's even further, and Wyoming's growth eventually stagnated. Today, Colorado has more than 10 times the population it had back in 1900, while Wyoming only has a bit more than 6 times its 1900-era population. Now, there were many reasons why things ended up turning out this way. For starters, Colorado is just an overall easier place to settle than Wyoming because they have more flat land to easily settle and develop. The Rocky Mountains take up a higher amount of the state's territory, and the Great Plains extend only across the eastern third of Wyoming, but they extend across roughly 40% of eastern Colorado. Another reason why Colorado's population has kept on growing since its foundation as a state is that it began to diversify its economy away from just mining and agriculture beginning in the 1940s. Colorado, being centrally located within North America, became a prime resource for the federal government to relocate its offices during World War II. By the end of the 1940s, Colorado boasted more federal government offices than anywhere else in the country outside of Washington, D.C. Several federal entities continue to have their headquarters in this state to this day, like the Air Force Academy, the U.S. Geological Survey, and the FBI. These federal relocations to Denver brought thousands of government employees and their families to the state and has served to diversify Colorado's economy away from mining and agriculture, which never happened in Wyoming. Also, 48% of Wyoming's total land area is just owned by the federal government outright, and while a lot of that land is dedicated to national and state parks like Yellowstone and Grand Teton, which collectively bring in nearly $1 billion a year in tourism revenue for the state, those revenues don't generate any growth or industry though. By contrast, only 36% of Colorado's total land area is owned by the federal government, which means Colorado is much bigger than Wyoming from a settlement and development perspective. Colorado, and especially Denver's strategic location, made it an ideal center for the telecom industry to set up large-scale operations during the 1990s. Denver's unique location on the 105th Meridian West at an elevation of more than 100 miles above sea level make it the largest city in America that can offer what's called a one bounce, real-time satellite uplink to all 6 inhabited continents during the same business day. Its location in the Mountain Time Zone further enables communication with both US coasts, South America, Europe, and Asia, all within the same business day as well. This led to huge telecom companies like Comcast, Dish, and Qwest all establishing large-scale presences and even headquarters around Denver. Today, 10 Fortune 500 companies are headquartered in Colorado, while Wyoming has none. There are also more opportunities for education within Colorado as well. Wyoming only has a single public 4-year university compared to Colorado's 42. Colorado also has one of the highest concentrations of private aerospace industries in North America. Many large aerospace companies set up their headquarters in the states like Ball and Maxar. Other aerospace companies like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, L3, and Northrop Grumman all set up major operations in the state that collectively employ more than 240,000 Coloradans, today making Colorado home to the largest private aerospace economy per capita in America. Colorado's booming aerospace economy and strategic location in the center of the United States gave further rise to the establishment of Denver International Airport in 1995, which has since become not only one of the most important airports in the country, but one of the most important airports anywhere in the world. Denver International was ranked as the 3rd busiest airport on the planet and the 3rd busiest in the United States by passenger traffic in 2021 and 2022. On the other hand, Wyoming's towns effectively function as satellites of Colorado because getting out of them by plane most often requires flights into Denver first, and there's rarely any alternatives, so Colorado's well-diversified economy in the 21st century sharply contrasts with Wyoming, which has effectively remained more or less the same for over a century. Today, Wyoming's economy is still dominated by the mining and ranching industries, and similarly to Colorado has also enjoyed a growth in tourism for the spectacular scenery and outdoor recreation, but Colorado has all of those industries too and even more. This ultimately means that Wyoming is significantly more susceptible than Colorado to boom and bust cycles and shocks in the global prices for minerals, coal, oil, gas, and agricultural products. When prices are high for these resources, times in Wyoming are good, but when the prices are low, times can get pretty tough. This can be seen quite clearly in Wyoming's demographics and rates of growth during the 1970s. When oil prices were booming, Wyoming's population exploded as tens of thousands of roughnecks came to the state looking for jobs and opportunities in the industry. Then in the 1980s, when the global price of oil crashed, Wyoming's economy was left devastated and the state saw negative population growth as more people left than entered, which is a stark contrast to Colorado's diversified economy during this same period, which still saw large-scale growth taking place. Wyoming saw modest population growth as the price of oil continued to rise again through the 90s and 2000s, but then it remained almost completely stagnant throughout the 2010s, as the fracking industry came to life in America and attracted most of the oil industry's capital and labor to the newer and cheaper to access Texas and North Dakota. Thus, with its fairly undiversified economy that's heavily reliant on the whims of global prices, Wyoming's population tends to fluctuate a lot from decade to decade between explosive growth and stagnation. While Colorado, with its well-diversified economy, continually maintained high rates of population growth every single decade for more than a century and a half. Colorado just offers all of the upsides of living in Wyoming with pretty much none of the downsides. Both states have spectacular natural beauty and outdoor activities that appeal to people with active lifestyles. Both states have very low taxes and low crime rates, but Colorado has more jobs for more people and also offers big city amenities that Wyoming will just never be capable of. Life in Wyoming doesn't have very much to do beyond the outdoor scene. By contrast, Colorado offers all of the amenities that most Americans are used to. Denver is also directly next door to the Rockies for outdoor recreation, while Wyoming only has the latter. Because of the Denver airport, it's also significantly easier for people and businesses to travel to and from Colorado than it is from anywhere in Wyoming, which only encourages more travel and business in Colorado. By 2050, Colorado's population is projected to roughly double from what it is today to somewhere between 8.6 and 10 million people, and will be almost completely driven by new people relocating to the state from elsewhere like California and Texas. Wyoming's future population is less certain, but we assume people from Wyoming are happy with the slow, laid-back lifestyle and they don't want their state to become like Colorado. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next one.